Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I am back for the second step of what I started yesterday, which is the OWL page. So if you are just joining me for the very first time, welcome. If you enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe and hit the little bell if you don't want to miss out being notified when I post a new video. This is a continuation of yesterday. I started a little late and so I didn't get it finished. So if you did not watch the previous video, you might want to watch that one first because I am really just finishing up what I was working on, and I won't go into as great a detail on things that I covered in yesterday's video as far as technique or products I used. I'll show you what I used, but I won't go into as much detail. So I am working on my Use Your Wings journal, like I said, and I was working on a single page that's going to be my owl, and then my heart will be next. So I'm going to jump ahead. I won't do my heart. I'm going to jump to the rest of the book and then do this last. But I wanted to finish up this one page because I was kind of on a roll and then had to quit. So yesterday I finished up this first flip, which I did with a recycled envelope. So I won't go over that, but I have made a pocket inside out of a grungy scrap of baking sheet that I had used to do some ink dyeing and coffee dyeing paper. So I have that pocket, and I've worked on the card that's going to go inside. And then I also had this guy that I decided at the end of the day yesterday that I wanted to make this a pocket too. So I'm going to do this pocket and this card, and then I won't do the card that's going to go in here on camera. I saved that for the final flip through. So all I have done to prepare today, just to make this not the longest video, is I took the page that I had yesterday, and this was when I left off, I had done my little collage and my stitching on that, and I decided that I wanted to make this a pocket so that I could put more quotes inside. So if you can tell, I also sprayed it with my sheer shimmer spray, and I need to order more, but I did show this yesterday, and I'm sure there's other brands of this type of thing. It's just called Sheer Shimmer Craft Spray by Imagine, and I really like it because it's very fine and it just leaves just the slightest little glisten on your things when you want like that extra layer. I wanted to keep this pretty simple, but I also want to have, you know, more dimension to it and just kind of another layer. And then I'm also going to put a sentiment on this. So far, I've just done the spraying. I went ahead and I added, since I'm going to make it a pocket, I wanted it a little stronger. It was just old book page. So I added another layer of book page to the back just with my glue stick. And that will be my pocket. I'm going to add gussets to that. So since I'm to this point, I think first what I'll do is figure out the sentiment I want to put on here. I'll show you kind of what I was thinking and put that on, and then just add this, and then we'll move on to that card. So for the sentiment, I pulled out I ended up scaling down what I was working on yesterday. So my sentiments were a little too large, and so I scaled them down. I wanted to turn them this way, landscape, so that I could fit more on the page, because I'm going to offer this as a freebie to you. So by the time this video is ready, and I think it'll actually even be in the previous video, you'll be able to download these quotes. So I've scaled them down smaller in the frame still. So there's 2 of each. We'll print on one 8.5 by 11 page. So I've gone ahead and just cut out a couple that I'm going to use today. But I wasn't sure after I cut one out, that was this one, that I went ahead and fussy cut it out, even around the little kind of detail. If you don't like the frilliness, you could cut that off, you know, do whatever you want. But I liked the size for this, and I thought I would just put it there. But I wasn't sure if I wanted it, I haven't aged this yet, so maybe when I do a little distressing, I might like it more. But I did print it out a couple other ways. For one thing, I wanted to test some different materials on my printer because I'm still I haven't tried everything on my printer yet. I bought a new Epson EcoTank, however you say it. And so I had kind of not the greatest experience to begin with because I had bought a lemon, and so I got a new one. They were really great. Customer service was great, but I'm still kind of playing around with it before I do a review, like a video review of it, because I want to. A lot of things are user problem, not the printer, and so I'm just wanting to kind of make sure I've learned everything I want to know before I do that. So now I've aged that with just a little vintage photo just to see. A lot of times what I like to do, but since I already put the sparkle here, if I didn't have the sparkle here, I might put it on this just to give some difference to my layers so they're not all the same. So I could put that kind of there, however, in the middle. I think I kind of like it offset a little bit. But then I thought, you know, what about the whole ghostly thing? You know, maybe I want to try printing it on vellum. So I went ahead and I printed it on the vellum. And when you print on vellum, before on my old printer, I didn't have a thin paper setting or didn't realize I had a thin paper setting. So I was always just printing on my regular setting or trying to do, you know, a better quality, which puts more ink on the paper. And I like how bold it is, but a lot of times you would get the situation where too much ink and then it needed to dry, it would curl. And I like the boldness of it, but sometimes it would smear in the printer before you got it out. So I learned with my new printer that there's actually a thin paper setting. And what that does is it doesn't put as much ink on the paper. So it comes out dry immediately, which is nice, but it's also very faint. It's not as bold. So I'm not sure. I think against a solid background, it would be fine. You'd see it. And I think that would be, you know, a nice thing. But I'm not sure about it on here because it's so translucent that I don't know that I love it. So I then printed on tissue paper, which I hadn't done at all in my new printer. And to print on tissue paper, I'll actually show you the vellum one. So this was my original on tea-dyed paper. And then this one is on the vellum, so you can see, you know, it's kind of lighter. And then this one I did on tissue. And if you've never printed on tissue, the way that I do it, there may be other ways. I have a little boo-boo down here, and I'll explain that. But I take a piece of tissue. Usually I use either white or a light color. You can do whatever you want. But this is just kind of a light beige kind of color. And I like it because then it's not white. And when you glue it down, you see through it anyway. But having that little bit of color, then it's kind of vintage looking. So to do that, I just take a regular piece of copy paper, and then I take some tape, and I usually use wall-safe Scotch tape because then if I want to tear it off, if I want to pull it off, it comes off easier. Usually I'm trying to not encroach on any of my wording. And I printed borderless. If you don't print borderless, there will be a border anyway, so you won't have to worry about that. But I printed borderless, so I really wanted to get it as close to the edge as I could. So I just put a little piece of tape along the tissue, and you can't really see, but see how this is offset a little bit? The tissue is a little bit smaller than my 8.5 by 11 paper. That's so that tape can stick to the white paper in the back. So I just stick it to that and then fold over the rest. You want to make sure it's trimmed where there's nothing hanging over. When I did mine, I didn't put a piece of tape all along the bottom. I just have it kind of in the center. And I hadn't done it in my printer yet, so I probably should have just gone ahead and put the piece the whole length, and I think that would have solved this problem. You could even do it around all four edges, and then you're really safe because nothing's going to shift in your printer or get stuck. So what happened on mine, it fed this way, and when it started feeding, because it's not attached everywhere, it was kind of coming like this was feeding at a different tension than this was. So I wasn't sure it was even going to work. And it did. All it did was kind of smear some there because it wasn't totally flat. So I would suggest taping it on all four sides if you've never tried this before. And a lot of times I even don't use the whole entire sheet. For this I did because I knew my labels, my quotes covered the whole sheet. But sometimes if I'm just really quickly printing one little thing from my computer and not a whole thing, I'll just put the tissue paper in the center where I need it and don't worry about it being covering the whole thing. That way you can get your tape nice and around all the edges. The other thing I like to do is to iron my tissue once it's on here, just to make sure I have the wrinkles out, because that would affect the printing too. So then you just run it through. I ran this through my rear feeder with just this piece in there, and had it on just a standard setting because it's all just black and white. So it came out fine, just without my little boo-boo there, by not putting tape the whole way down. So I just tore that out. And to do that, if you've never, worked with tissue paper, I use a water pen. If you don't have a water pen, you can just use a paintbrush dipped in water, and you just go around the edge. And I think I left some of this so you can see how easy it makes it. You just go around the edge where you want to tear. I didn't completely fussy cut this out. And then it's wet, so it just comes off without tearing more than you wanted. So I'm going to finish this little piece because I have a feeling this might be the one I want to use, just to do something different than a piece of paper. Because the other one I'm going to put on a card, I'm going to do even different. I like, just to kind of mix up in my journal, especially if it's in one spread. Don't do everything the same. Each element maybe have a different effect. So I kind of like how that looks. And I can even try to distress that a little bit if I wanted, just carefully. And I would use, this is Vintage Photo. I've been using walnut stain too on this project. I don't want to use the same thing, like I said, on everything. So I'm just kind of trying to mix it up. So I used walnut stain around the edge of this whole card. So I'm just going to use something a little lighter here. So just kind of, age that a little bit more. And then to glue that on, I would actually probably use Mod Podge, just because it gets it wet, and then you'll see through it. I'll see through to the trees, but I'll still see this text better than on the vellum because it's darker. So I think just to be different, I'm going to use this one. So I need to get some glue. Okay, I was a little not prepared. I like to brush my Mod Podge on because I'm using this giant thing. And normally I put this in another container, but because this is the only thing I think I'm going to use it for, I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. So I'm using matte Mod Podge. It comes in lots of different finishes, gloss and semi-gloss and all that kind of stuff. But because I have sparkle on here and I'm using glossy somewhere else, I'm just going to go ahead and use the regular. So I'm just going to kind of decide where I want it, because I don't want glue everywhere. Even though it is matte and it's going to dry clear, I just don't want more than I need. So I'm just going to kind of go where this tissue is going to be. Oops, not getting that up there. And the nice thing about this is I'm getting some under, but because it's tissue, if I miss a spot, I'm going to be going over it anyway. I just think this is because tissue is so delicate, I just think this is the easiest way to glue something down and have it not be too wrinkly. There may be other ways and better products, but that's what I'm going to use. So I like it that it's just a little darker. You see the border and the wording, and you do still see some of the trees beyond that. So I kind of like that. It goes along with that whole thing I was talking about yesterday, where the moon's shining through things and the owls flying through the trees, and you kind of it's just that still kind of ghostly look. Okay, so that needs to dry for just a second. So while I do that, I'm gonna also want to make some gussets, because I did decide to go ahead and make this a pocket, and it's just book page and it's fragile. I want to be able to put something in here and not have it be too tight. So I'm gonna make those real quick out of some, while this dries, out of some just book page. So I need them to be, I need one to go along here, the three sides. So I'm just gonna eyeball the size. So like 1/4 inch is, maybe good. So I'm just going to make a little, fold it and then cut it. And they don't have to be perfect. You're not going to see them. They're on the inside. It's just giving me some room in my thing here. So I'm going to have one along this side. Is it the right side? Nope, I need it along this side. And then I need 2 more for the sides. So when I'm doing a big project too, I usually make, you know, cut these on the paper cut, you know, fold it and cut them on the paper cutter and cut a bunch at once. But I did not prepare myself. Let's see. Okay, and then I'm going to glue these on. So again, my pocket's going to go this way, so I need the long one here. Now, if you were going to go ahead and make your card that's going to go in here now, you could measure before I glue this in and know, since it is a torn edges, you could go ahead and measure and then you'd know what size your card's going to be, but I'm not going to do that till later, so I'll figure that out later. So I am ready now, I think, to go ahead and glue this into my book, and then I'll have a nice pocket. And then if you're also worried about, you know, letting it, make sure it sticks really well, if you can reach, if you have little clips that will reach that far over. Usually it's just these top corners that are tricky. Okay, so we'll let that sit for a minute, and now I'm going to make my pocket, or my card that's going to go in this pocket. And I decided to do a tag, kind of a pocket tag. That way I can fit more inside. So I went ahead and I've prepared some pieces just to save time. So, this didn't stick very well. So this is just a piece of scrap cardstock that I had printed something accidentally on. And so because I wanted it to be writable. So this is going to be my tag side, the front decorative side. And then on the back, I've torn the top so that you'll see that it's a pocket. But I want this to be writable. So all I've done is taken that piece, and just to make it sturdier, since it's going to be a pocket too, I've put the book page on the other side. But obviously I didn't get my glue stick on there very good, so I'm just going to use some of this. I used a glue stick to do that. And this book page that I'm using up is so brittle that it's really only good for decoupage sort of things. But it's also very linen-y, if that makes sense. It's like it's got a lot of, it's old, so it's got a lot of cotton or something in it. And so it really kind of soaks up and glue stick quickly, and maybe doesn't always stick the best. So this is the inside. I'm not too worried about it. I should get that top edge though, because I'm gonna actually stitch this whole pocket anyway. So I think I'll put a little bit more on this edge. It doesn't seem like there's like one glue, you know, that does everything perfectly. Because especially when you're working with old things, just some things just don't stick as well. Okay, so that is my back side that is writable. And I've just gone and used my We Are Memory Keepers corner punch. It has 3 sizes, and I used the middle size, which is 7mm for this one. I like to round the corners of anything that's going to go in a pocket, because it slides in and out much easier than if you leave these sharp. So you can always do it with scissors if you don't have a corner punch. But it's a tool that I use all the time. So it's, you know, if I have to, one of these days I'll do a post that is like all my favorite must-have tools. So I have the front of my card, then my tag. early on in this project, when I sorted through all my hand-painted papers and kind of put them in groups, part of the reason I did that was because I wanted to make master boards to use for tags. So I didn't want to use up any of the papers that I really liked that I was going to be using on the spreads. So I wanted to just use the papers I didn't like. So after I had kind of went through, I took all the ones I didn't like and I just collaged them onto a piece of just scratch paper, some just white copy paper that was, you know, stuff I didn't need anymore. So I used, I have a video where I did these, and I believe I used Mod Podge and then, you know, sealed them. And then I did some other things to them, you know, some stamping and some splatters and that kind of thing. I put some gesso, which kind of makes the edges blend in. But I just took them to this point and then left them there because every page that I'm working with them, I might have something specific I want to add to it. So I left them at that stage. And then for this card, I decided I wanted a little bit more color in this little bit because it's kind of all these neutrals, you know, and I kind of go from page and I want to carry it through to the next page so that it flows nice. But I want to start introducing more color because this is going to be, you know, more colorful, I think, again. So to do that, I decided I wanted to use some of my collage, you know, paper. So I just chose a corner out of there that I liked the colors for what I had going on already, but would, you know, be a little more colorful than plain. I had another one. I kind of was looking at this too, but that was a little bit too busy for what I wanted. So you can see the difference. I've already added a little bit more from what it was here to here. So far all I've added is I did the vintage photo around the edge, and then I kind of went a little bit in where the papers met each other because there were some white edges. So I kind of used the Distress Oxide in vintage photo for that. And then I used my sparkle spray. And so what that did was it kind of helped some of that ink oxidize because it's wet. And then I just dried it with my heat gun. So I do have a little bit of a sparkle. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the camera here, but there's a little bit of shimmer to that. So that step is done. I do want to add a little bit more to it. The other thing that I did is I was trying to decide what quote I wanted. So I chose this one that was about grandmother owl. And I kind of think, you know, this kind of looks grandmotherly, you know, the way this frame is on this. And so I chose one of the owls from the Graphics Fairy. And I think I'm going to go with this larger one. And kind of do something like this. But I'm thinking it needs a little bit more. I've gone ahead and I fussy tore this out and then just used my vintage photo on this edges too. And then on this one, I did the same thing with the vintage photo and I had torn it out. But then I also used my embossing, clear embossing again. So I used this yesterday. I won't do a demo of it, but it's this clear transparent embossing powder. So I used that just to give that a different texture than the owl. So I think I'm going to kind of layer it like this, and then I want stitching around the edge. But before then, I want to do a little bit of stamping, I think. So let me grab a stamp. Let's see. I had pulled this one out yesterday. So I think I'm just going to use, not a lot. I just want something because it's a little bit plain. And I think I'll just use I'm going to use black soot, or what else do I have? Oh, this is also black soot. Okay, some black soot archival ink, I think, instead of the brown. And actually, I don't even need that block. I think I can just do this by hand since I'm only doing a little bit. And then maybe I don't know if you can hear the wind. We finally got rain. We were supposed to get snow, but it warmed up, so it's been raining. And the wind is now what will take that whole storm away. And we're supposed to have a beautiful Sunny day in the 60s tomorrow. They say if you don't like the weather in the mountains, to wait 15 minutes. And it's true. I haven't walked in a few days because the weather's been really, really bad, and then it makes your allergies really bad. So I've been kind of avoiding it, but I'm really needing a walk. I feel like I really want to walk. So I'm gonna hopefully tomorrow get out again with my buddy. Okay, I think that's enough. I don't want to do too much, just something so that there's another little thing in the background. And then I'm going to glue that down, and I think call that almost done. Okay, so let's see, I'm just going to use this just so everything sticks really well. Oh, I think I'll glue this first. So I'm gonna then just stitch this. I think what I'll also do, but I'll do this first. I'm gonna glue it and then stitch it and then put a little something here, and that will be done. Cute. I'm happy with that. And the thing I like also about using the collage is it goes with this, but it kind of, you know, it's cohesive with the rest of the book too. You know, I want everything to kind of go together. It's kind of an old decorating thing. You can be eclectic, but what you do to see if everything is going to kind of go is throw everything in a pile. And if it all looks good, then it's going to look good together, even if it's all eclectic. So I'm going to go stitch around this and then add a little topper. Okay, so for this one to be different, I went ahead and used a zigzag stitch. Oops. And sometimes I'm using just a kind of a tan thread, and it doesn't always show up. So if you kind of go back over, depending on what color thread you do, I just go back over with my ink and dirty it up a little bit more, and then it shows up a little bit better. And the other thing is, usually on this back side, you see all the piercing marks that are kind of sometimes white depending on what you've been doing. And so same thing there, as I go and just go with my dauber. I didn't even put more ink on it. I just left it what was on there, because that's enough usually to just get rid of those white bits and just make the stitching look a little bit more finished. So I always do that. And then I want to make a little thing here, and I think I'm going to find my slot. I found this little piece of ribbon. It's kind of sheer. I don't know where it was, but it was laying on my table off of something else. It had a knot, like it had been tied on something, so I cut all that off, and I ended up with just this little teeny tiny piece. So I've just made the edges look like a banner. So I think because it's so small, I don't really have room to tie a knot. So I think if I use a slot, it's this one. And I'll have to find where I got this because I don't remember. But it just makes a nice straight slot. And then that way, this ribbon, I won't have to tie it. I'll just glue it in, and because it's gonna lay flat. I should do it from this side so I can see. I'm just gonna eyeball center. So it just makes kind of a different thing instead of a hole. I kind of like that, just to mix it up. And then that way this will just fit in there. And the nice thing about making this a card, you know, thing, I tore this lower so I didn't have to worry about accidentally stitching the top closed, because I've done that before. I was able to just stitch all the way around in one go at it. So I think if I just do this and maybe just put a little bit of glue there, it'll hold it and I won't need to tie it. See, it might have been smarter to do it before I stitched, because then I would have stitched over it. That would have been good. Maybe I'll go do that. And I don't have to worry about it coming off. I think I'll do that, because this glue does not want to go through organza ribbon very well. Okay, I might not think of everything the first time, but I do eventually. Okay, my cute little tag pocket. So I can put something in there. Now I'm not gonna be able to put too much because I didn't put gussets on that, but I don't have a lot of room, you know. So I just really kind of wanted, I may even just put a piece of paper in there for writing, or, you know, a piece of paper that has a quote along the top or bottom. So that'll be something you have to wait and see in the final flip through. So there's my little grandmother owl page. And it's nice because it just added a little bit more color there. And this is probably, hopefully dry. And now I have room in here for a card, so I'll measure for that, and that will also be something that you see in the final flip through. So that was it. That's it for today. I have my owl finished. Again, my book is never going to close. It's going to be a heart here, and then it'll stand open nicely because these pages are all end up so stiff. They all kind of hold up. So I'll have my heart, and then the last half, and it will look like this on a shelf, and you'll want to go pick it up and play and look in there. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.